Japhet Ndlovu is the name, and I serve as Executive Minister for the Church in Mission Unit at our General Council office. And this piece of our work that has brought us here is housed within the Church in Mission Unit. Long before those of us who are migrants, or indeed immigrants, or settlers, and those who are descendants of settlers, long before those of us who fall in those categories came to this land to live, there were people here. And so we acknowledge that many nations of indigenous people have lived on the land where we are currently living. And I am connecting to you from the territory of the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and Huron peoples. And I don't know where you're connecting from. Maybe you can feel free to acknowledge the land, the territory from where you are connecting. And it is important for us always to remember that when we do land acknowledgements, we do it out of respect. Respect for history, respect for the people of this land. And we should all commit ourselves to the stewardship of the land. Thank you for those that are acknowledging the territories and the lands from where you are connecting. Deeply appreciated. Thank you. Oh, there are people who want to join who are on wait list.
Now, I'm just looking at that now. It looks like the system was set up to make it unavailable once we started. I'm going to just change that product so that it's unavailable 2 hours from now, but we should be able to get people in right away.
Thank you.
I have a new person who's helping me with some of these things, and we're still working out all the details. If you have friends who tried to sign up and couldn't after 1 p.m. Eastern time, please tell them to try again.
Thank you, friends, for recognizing those territories from where we are connecting. May I invite us to pray together. Dear God, source of love and source of light, show us the way of love and acceptance. Guide us as we gather to offer words and understanding for an apology to the queer community for the harm and exclusion we have caused. Help us to listen with humility and compassion and to understand the depth of the pain and the marginalization that our words and our actions have inflicted, or indeed words and actions of our history. Grant us the courage to acknowledge our mistakes and to commit to a path of healing, reconciliation, and justice. We pray that the words we come up with for our apology be a step towards creating a community that is truly inclusive, welcoming, and affirming of all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. May we strive to be a reflection of your love, which knows no bounds and excludes no one. Show us the way of love and acceptance. Guide us on this journey towards healing and reconciliation. And may we emerge from this process with hearts that are more compassionate, minds that are more open, and the spirits that are more just. We pray these things in the name of love, in the name of compassion, and in the name of justice, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, and over to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Japheth. Greetings and welcome to today's town hall. We are very glad that you're able to join us for this gathering and grateful for your insight and gifts that you will share with us in our discussions today. I'm Jane Thirikwa. I go by she, her pronouns. I am the 2S&LGBTQIA+ Global Advocacy Program Coordinator at the United Church General Council Office, and I'm joining you from the territory belonging to 6 nations of the Grand River. I am also joined today by members of the 2S and LGBTQIA+ Apology Task Group, which has been working to formulate an apology statement for the United Church of Canada that addresses the harms and hurts that members of the Two Spirit and LGBTQIA+ community members have experienced. I will invite Reverend Michiko in no priority order to start us off with introductions because they're next on my screen. Michiko?
Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see this turnout. You know, when we as a community decided to do this, we didn't really know, or I didn't really expect to see so many people here today. So thank you. My name is Michiko. I'm a minister for Glenmorris United Church. That's in Southwestern Ontario. And I've been journeying with this project for a while, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you, Michiko. Chris Dawson?
Well, I'm in British Columbia, so I'll say good morning. I am Chris Dolson, and I am a lay member of Kamloops United Church, which is right in the middle of BC. My home is on the unceded territory and ancestral homelands of the Tecumseh, Secwepemc, and Secwepemcúlecw. And it was my experiences with the affirming ministry at Kamloops United Church that nudged me towards applying to be a part of this apology task group.
Thank you, Chris. Reverend Aaron?
Hello, everyone. My name is Reverend Aaron Michkota. I'm a minister at 2 churches here in rural Prince Edward County, Cressy Glenora United Church and South Bay United Church. I'm a longtime friend and ally of this project and these conversations. And like my colleagues here, so happy to see everybody today.
Thank you, Aaron. Fred?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fred Monteith. I'm retired ministry personnel, having served congregations in Ontario and Quebec, and 15 years on the staff of the former Hamilton Conference. Since retirement, I've done a number of supply appointments and contract positions, and I have been honored to be part of this group. And I'm coming to you from the traditional territory of 6 nations of the Grand River.
Thank you, Fred. We also received apologies from Reverend Tricia Gerhard, who's the other task group member who was not able to join us today. And we would also like to acknowledge and honor Stephen Shell's contribution to the task group. Stephen offered critical insight to help inform the church's apology to Two Spirit people specifically, and we are grateful for his presence and gifts to this group. So a quick run through today's agenda. We will hear an introduction to the work from Reverend Aaron, who will give a brief history of how we arrived here as we map our way forward. And then we will have 2 breakout sessions today, and we will invite folks to engage with us and offer feedback to some questions that will help guide the task group and us at GCO on continuing to carry this work forward. I now invite Reverend Aaron to start us off.
Thank you. Hello again. So I'll be sharing a brief overview of the work done thus far in our church. It all began in 1925. Sorry, I've been practicing that joke for our centennial year at every meeting I go to, so I thought I'd start with that today. But we're going to zoom forward to the 1980s. So leading up to 1988, there was conversation and work done around gender and sexuality. In 1988 General Council, there was a vote on membership and ministry for gay and lesbian people, which is where we were at that time, to be full members and thus ministers in the United Church. That vote passed. The 10 years after that were called the issue years, in which there was a sort of informal adjustment, conversation, discussion, and perhaps even tension in our church regarding that vote that had passed. After 20 years passed, there was a national GLBT consultation, excuse me as I look at my notes here. In 2011, a national GLBT consultation was formed. People went across the country to gather feedback about LGBT experiences in our church. And at that time, the T was for trans people who are included and also where the movement and culture was at. Experiences in our church since 1988. And one of the recommendations of this group was an apology. You'll see through this history that I'm sharing with you that there are periods of gathering information, gathering stories and experiences, and opening up our eyes to opening our ears to voices and perspectives. And then there's a period of distilling, analyzing, discerning, and consultation. And so back and forth has been this movement in our church of gathering and distilling. So there was that gathering and then distilling. And the recommendation that came out of that was for an apology. General Council voted that the Irides project for a living apology project, and the Irides project began in 2017 and ran until 2019. Again, that was a project of gathering stories, testimonials, experiences, art, worship, prayer, and more from people across the United Church. When that project came to a close, there were some elements that were missing from the Irides project, some voices that weren't heard that we wanted to hear from. For example, marginalized voices, more marginalized voices, Two Spirit voices, and more rural voices. And so in the year 2020, the Irides, 2023, the Irides working group was formed. The Irides working group was formed to create the 7 recommendations, the 23-page document to the United Church. That document was also included on the ChurchX page that brought you here today. So if you want to take a look at those recommendations and read them carefully, I would encourage you to do so. That's the product of that group. So that those recommendations were then presented to the General Council Executive in 2023. In 2024, the General Council Executive formed the task group on the apology. This today is a gathering of the task group and the work that has come from it, that we are now in this period of discerning and conversation with you all to your perspectives and your feedback from it. Today is a community-based moment for us to share what our thoughts, our feelings, our intuition, and where the Spirit is leading us in this ongoing conversation of our church. Finally, I'd like to take a moment. Actually, our group wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in each one of these expansions and distillings of this ongoing conversation. So many people have been part of this. And of course, I want to also uplift the voice of Steve, who was a member of our team and made such vital contributions. I hope that's helpful to everyone. If you'd like to have a bit more history on this project, you can visit irides.ca/history. I'll put it in the chat, and you can see a little bit more expansion of the history there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. And I also want to extend our thanks to everybody who gave us feedback during our initial ask last fall. We did an online survey and we did get some feedback from folks, and we're really appreciative of that. And you can see that this is still ongoing work in that sense. So now I'm going to invite Fred, who is going to read the wording of the draft apology that the task group has formulated, after which we will invite you into small breakout groups, and we will post some of the guiding questions in the chat so that you can refer to that as you go into the discussions of the working group.
An apology to members of the 2S and LGBTQIA plus communities harmed by the United Church of Canada. Recognizing the need for apologies to be lived into action, the United Church of Canada offers the following statement in response to findings IRIDES, the Living Apology Project, and the 2011 National LGBT Consultation. To all 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals who currently are or have previously been connected with the United Church of Canada. Over the past decade, the Church has engaged in intentional listening processes to better understand the experiences of 2S LGBTQIA plus people within the United Church of Canada. We have engaged in prayer, reflection, art, listening, community building, and more through a national LGBT consultation and IRIDES, the Living Apology Project. We are grateful for each story that has been shared and hold with sadness the large reality that there are still many stories of harm left untold. In response to these stories, we would like to express our deepest apologies to all who have experienced homophobia, transphobia, and/or biphobia within the United Church of Canada. This at times has looked like overt actions such as loss of income, harassment, being denied access to church leadership, and threats to personal safety. The church should be a place of sanctuary and belonging for all people. You deserved a church that reflected God's unconditional and abiding love. Homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia has also been present in the times when we remained silent or ignorant, instead of actively ensuring policies of inclusion and welcome were being lived out in communities of faith, presbyteries, regions, and at the national level of the church. We recognize that 2S LGBTQIA plus members of the United Church of Canada have experienced feelings of abandonment when feeling unsafe or unable to access support and care, navigating the homophobic, biphobic, and/or transphobic church environments. Moving forward, we recognize that change is required in the hearts and minds throughout the United Church of Canada, and also through actions taken at an institutional level. In response to all we have learned and are continuing to learn, we humbly commit ourselves to upholding and fulfilling the recommendations of the Living Apology into Action statement issued by IRIDES Working Group to the General Secretary of the United Church of Canada in February of 2023.
Thank you so much, Fred. We will now invite you to small discussion groups in breakout sessions, and we will post a couple of guiding questions in the chat to help drive this conversation forward. In this first session, we are asking you to assist us with a couple of questions. How does the apology ring? And do you think the church can say this in good conscience? And how do we live into this apology? We will invite you in your groups to pick a liaison, somebody who can give us their feedback when we come back to the report back session. And since we are a large group, we will begin at first and pick at random five groups to do their presentations, and then invite everybody else to present any other feedback that will not have been issued by the first 5 groups. So we'll post those questions in the chat. You'll be able to reference them there. And Stephen is going to help us to put folks into those small groups.
Sure. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you so
my
much.
question to you is how long do you want to be in the group? What I can set a timer for us, but I need to know the timing, if you please.
20 minutes.
20
In
minutes.
respect of everybody's time, yes.
Oh, that's good. So if you look up at the top right of your screen, you will see that there's a countdown clock, and it'll tell you how much time you have left. And as you're talking away, please make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk and that you're aware of when the group is going to be ending. Otherwise, I understand Jane is going to put the questions into the chat. And so when you get into your small group, you should be able to open the chat and find them there again. Do you want to put them in now, Jane, just so that we can see what they look like? The chat will automatically close when you get into your small group, but you can open it again and you'll find that your questions are there waiting for you. Any questions about that before we begin? Okay. And we have 20 minutes and we'll see you back here when you're done.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I know that sometimes with this kind of discussions, 20 minutes is never enough, but we do appreciate the time that you have spent with these discussions. So I will call on Reverend Michiko. They're going to help us to collect some feedback. We will randomly pick 5 groups. If you have somebody who can share the discussions from your group, that would be very helpful. And we will also be inviting you, if you have other comments that you would like for us to particularly take note of, please feel welcome to share those in the chat, just so that we don't miss them. Or the liaison from your group can also contact me personally. I'll give you my address afterwards, and you can send me the notes from your discussions. Over to Michiko. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I hope you had a fruitful time of just getting to connect with each other and to share your thoughts and reactions. So at this time, I'm just wondering if you're comfortable using the hand raising function. That might be the easiest way for me to get a sense if there was something that came up in your conversation that felt particularly urgent or poignant that you wanted to share with a larger group. Yes, I'm going to recognize Esther, and we can go from there.
I just came from 12 and a half years in academia, so I'm very comfortable with the hand raising function. So I was in a small group where we were discussing, particularly what came out of it was noting that 1988 is sometimes viewed as the sort of the peak point, but really, if we're in this position of making the apology now, that this is a continuation, this is the beginning, that there are generations who were post 1988, including me, who experienced harm at the hands of the church. I think the second point that I think is really important is recognizing the tensions between groups that still resist full open affirmation and acceptance within the United Church, both those within either racialized minorities or age minorities or populations that experience ageism, but also just within the mainstream of the church as well, that sometimes I think at least for me, I forget that not everybody in the United Church is like, yeah, gay people. But they're not. We're not done, is I think what we were highlighting.
Thank you, Esther. I'm just coming back here and seeing a few more hands on screen. Andrea, so nice to see you here. Yeah, feel free to share.
Thank you. And I'll lower my hand while I think to do so. I was in a small but dynamic group, and we had a very fulsome conversation. One of the concerns that was raised was that the The document felt a bit self-congratulatory about, look at all of what we've done and aren't we great for doing it? And we had a conversation about looking at that perhaps as these are the credentials. This is the work that we've done in order to be able to be the ones to draft this apology. The concerns of limited effectiveness with the church, that there's no mention of family or society as a whole, and the understanding that it is not possible to be all things to all people. That there will be folks that will read it and say it's not enough. There'll be folks that will read it and say it's too much. There will folks that read it and say I don't like it. And so something, a phrase, I think that it's well written, and I think that what I'm very excited about is the last two parts of it. Moving forward, we recognize that change is required. So in other words, it's not that we've done all of this tremendous work and we've come up with this one-page document, yay us, and then we put it in a bulletin board and we don't ever look at it again. That this is a living document. It's going to be ongoing. And the accountability piece is incredibly important, that this is what we've done. It's not perfect, but it's the best that we can do. This is what we expect from those that read this, that we adopt, should we choose to adopt this, that we will be held accountable, and we will make sure that there are checks and balances in place to ensure that that happens. But going forward, there was a recommendation about looking at the affirming status of all the congregations in the United Church of Canada, and what does that look like? And we look at that as a very, very positive thing to say, if you're not in this process, why aren't you in this process? Do you need more help? Are there resources available? Do you need somebody to come and help you? And figure out what it is that's going on there. But overall, it was a very fulsome conversation, and I'm grateful to Janet, Emma, and Jim for the conversation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Andrea. Yes, Julian.
Hi. So our group was really great. We had a lot of really fruitful moments, I think. There were a few things that I will drop in the chat, and I'll also just say here. One of the points that we were talking about was in the text, it mentions communities of faith, presbyteries, regions, and the national body. And we were sort of wondering, the conferences aren't mentioned, but presbyteries are, and sort of there's maybe potentially some disconnect there for folks. Also, there's some space to hold other branches of the United Church that possibly also perpetuated these things. So United Church Women, schools, potentially summer camps, different forms of ministries that potentially aren't communities of faith, but are still, United Church nonetheless. The other thing that I think is a big point that I'm sure a lot of people brought up is, it's the national church can say this, and we felt, how do we think the church can say this in good conscience? The national church, yes, but how can this translate down to the many communities of faith that are non-affirming and that still perpetuate harm? And I say non-affirming, not with capital A affirming, but how does this translate to, people are saying, oh, the United Church released this statement, that's so great, I'm going to go to my local church and everything will be fine. And how can we take responsibility for, or maybe we don't take responsibility, like how does that translate to the communities that potentially are really holding on to that, we have a right to do what we want and don't agree with the national church. Yeah, I think those were the two most pressing things, but there was a really great positive response to the idea that the apology needs to be lived out, and that's voiced there. There's accountability that living into the recommendations and the words is going to happen, and that's really important. So there was a lot of positive feelings about that.
Great. Yeah, some wonderful pieces that have come up there. And yeah, if there is like that list mentally of the different pieces of the church that should be listed as well, it would be great just to have that in writing, and if other people want to just contribute to make sure that we've caught all those different pieces. Thank you. Okay, I think we said we would do about 4 or 5 hands, and I'm seeing Barb, you've got your hand up. So yes, take it away.
Hi, good to be here. And I was in a small group. There were 4 of us. 2 were staff, and two of us of a certain generation. One of us was ordained in 84, that would be me, and the other in 88. So we carried the long history. I had a wondering if the statement could be a little more poetic and less bureaucratic. Compare and contrast to the initial apology to Indigenous people in I think it was 86, issued by then moderator Bob Smith, kind of admitting to the harms and trying to move forward in a good way. We also wondered if we have addressed, for our particular cohort group, it was 4 decades of rejection and hurt and persecution. And we had a sense that for many folks in congregations today, that's new information. They weren't there. It's a new generation. We're a generation out from some of the worst of that history. We had a suggestion that perhaps some video clip testimonies, some storytelling to accompany the apology might be a helpful tool for people. And a piece that was lacking, at least for me, was there was no reference to the groups within the United Church that were actively campaigning against this, against anything progressive with queer people. And in fact, we're on a mission to out people and make sure that they did not, that we did not have any access to leadership in the church or even membership. So I don't know what we do with that stuff. I don't want to be vindictive about it, but I think that's an important part of our history, that some of us lived in that kind of terror and fear for decades. I think that represents
that's the community of concern would have been.
Yes,
yeah.
And the Renewal Fellowship as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the piece mentioned there around using videos or different ways of animating the apology. Our group, there was Daisy asked a question about how this would land intergenerationally, and thinking about the fact that it's really nice if this gets read at General Council, and then, you know, United Church nerds that are really paying attention to in that way receive it. But in terms of how that's received wider Canadian society, and for people of different ages, being intentional with, say, using social media or like the language and ways in which it's shared would really change the impact of the apology. And yeah, the Iridescent project already has collected so many stories, and there's so many resources and pieces that exist. To see them further animated would be wonderful. I'm wondering if there was anyone who had something come up in their group that they were feeling would be important to share with a larger group.
Folks are continuing to share on the chat, so we appreciate that feedback as well. So please feel free to continue sending those to us. I'm just looking at the time, and I know we have another session, and our meeting today goes till 2:30. So wondering if we can go into a second group now, into the second group discussion. And you may have covered this in your first group, so in your first group discussions, but we are asking about some of the ways, some of the worship ways that congregations can respond, sort of like some different ideas of things that can be incorporated, such as like a worship service, and also what support would you require in your ministry and congregation, whether that be resources and support from GCO to help move this, to keep this as a living apology initiative. So I think, Stephen, to put us in our second group discussion so that we are conscious and respectful of everybody's time. And just a note there, somebody mentioned that they have heard that Indigenous peoples do not want to be lumped in with within the whole of the acronym. So term it as Two Spirit and LGBTQIA plus folks, which is some of the language that the task group used in this draft. So we go into our second group discussions, maybe 15 minutes, so that we are mindful of the time and respectful of everybody's time.
Thank you, Jane.
you
Do you
put the
want to be
question
back
in the
into the
chat?
same groups, or do you want to
Sorry.
be in new groups?
Is someone asking a question?
Can you please put the question in the discussion topic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And my question to you, Jane, is do you want people back in the same groups with the people they talked to before, or do you want new groups? We can do it
Shuffle.
either way. Shuffle them around. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. So 15 minutes. I'll just set the timer. And we'll see you back here in 15. Turn the recording.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much. I think we'll follow the same process of collecting feedback from groups as we did in the first session. So if you could please raise your hand if you want to share from your group, and I will again put my email address in the chat if you want to email me your feedback or put it in the chat. I know sometimes it takes a bit of work to kind of scroll through the chats looking for an email address, so I'll keep posting it there. So any group that wants to share? Reverend Aaron.
Hello again, everyone. In my group, I had Daisy, Sherry, Jennifer, Jane, and myself. So some ideas we had were to have rainbow stoles, which were very encouraging, and rainbow candles. That perhaps the draft can be broken into smaller chunks that communities of faith can use in bite-sized pieces. And we liked also that idea of smaller chunks to use on social media. We also love the idea of the poetic way. One idea was to make resources, worship and prayer resources specific for different audiences. So for example, resources for those churches, communities of faith that are already affirming, those that are not, those that are in process, those that are hesitant, because there might be different needs or opportunities there. One idea was a resource to track homophobia and also to track affirming experiences, and also resource to address people's fears. So resources to know how to respond if homophobia happens to your church, so that can be discussed in advance. There was also an idea of using a resource like the stewardship resource, which is called to be the Church, have something like that, but for the apology. So it's a similar format that folks might be familiar with, but geared towards this topic. And finally, there was linking to things that already exist, such as our deep spirituality, bold discipleship, daring justice theme of our church right now, the kinds of the hymns that we have in Voices United and More Voices, uplifting bringing together those resources and using them to sort of deepen that message and connect everything all together. Oh, and one last one was maybe resources with suggestions on how to animate the apology past the walls of the church. For example, maybe like hosting a choir concert with all, hymns that would be appropriate or something like that. Yeah, so those were our ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other group that would want to share? Let's see if I can see everybody.
I can't seem to find the hand raising thing on my computer for some reason, so I'm just raising my hand in real life.
There you go. Thank you, Kirsten. You can go.
I was in a group with oh goodness, now I'm terrible with names. Ken Delisle was for sure there because I knew him before, and then Sarah, and I'm sorry, speak up if I am forgetting your name. The other person that was in our group. But anyway, there were some of the things similar to what Aaron just shared, and but I'll just share one thing that was shared that wasn't. It was that, there's a variety of experiences of the people that are part of the groups that are being apologized to, so based on generation, based on when they've been a part of the United Church throughout this history, based on just their own personal experiences. So just to be mindful of that in terms of that, some of these people this apology is going to hit them on a very tender level, and for some people it will just be merely exciting and something to celebrate. So there'll be a lot of that different experiences to be aware of that. And one particular thing that I wanted to share was the suggestion that the church, the national church, really needs to come out strong with this, because some of the discussions that came out of 1988, when there was lots of, it was difficult for people who it pertained to hear some of those discussions. And so the national church really needs to come out strong with lots of conviction behind this. Obviously other courts might have to take it as they are, but that's that as long as we come out strong at the national level, I think that's really, really important to name that support. And it was Tony Burnett. I looked through here and found it. That's the other person in my group. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you so much. Pix and Heather?
Hi there. In our group, we were fortunate to have two younger folks in our group, and I was just trying to calculate. They're probably in their 30s, but that's for some of us, that's a younger group, reminding us that things have changed since 1988, but the storytelling is great for them, and so we need to remember the importance of the storytelling about what went on and what we're trying to grow into. Also, the kind of comparison was made that what some of us LGBTQ folks went through in the 80s, we have trans folks going through the very same things now. And so we're hearing some of the very same kinds of responses from people. So we might feel we're all, full of pride and waving the flag, but we can't quite get trans folks and pronouns and non-binary. And so we don't want to just sit here as the church in the same way we sat in 88. We need to get in with change and learn some things. So we were talking about, would our congregations want to hear this kind of learning on a Sunday morning? And some said not sure. Some thought yes, it could. So we have to be the ones to go back to the congregations we're with to say, what about this? Can it be a section of a Sunday? Can it be a Wednesday afternoon? Can it be a Saturday? How can we continue to learn together, I guess? And storytelling came up from 2 or 3 people and how important it is. And many around these squares today know that we have some exceptional storytellers in our midst right here today. One who was named as Barb Janes. And so who knows, we could get Barb going on some stories that we could share all across the country. That would be fun too. So that's some things from our group. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take one more person and then we'll hand it over to Japheth, who will give us next steps and closing. So if somebody has something burning they'd like to share, you're welcome to do so now.
I'm just going to make a comment here. One of the things that I have not heard is about making our churches a safe space. We haven't talked about what we have is, if we are going to do the things that we're talking about, then we also need to say, well, if we're going to make an apology, then we have to also show that we are no longer a place to be scared of, because obviously people had bad experiences in the past. So a safe space, one of the suggestions that could be made is that everybody in the congregation should wear a name tag
Right now?
that shows
Then
that,
it's off my list. So that, yeah, it'll just take me a second. I'm just listening.
yeah, that
Sorry.
yeah, so that some you can wear name tags so that everybody that comes through the door is able to address you by your name, and that you're not hiding anything, and that's open and inclusive. I don't know whether that is something that others have thought about. It is something that we'd actually had I experienced.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing, Jeff. And thank you to everybody who's emailing me and adding their notes in the chat. I really do appreciate that. So I'll hand it over now to Japheth, who will give us a couple of words about the next process, next steps, and lead us in the closing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you for your feedback. Very important pieces of work that we have contributed to this ongoing task before us. Going forward, the task group will sit down to analyze all this information that has been given in this space and see how best to incorporate, how best to adjust the text that we have before us so that it can be made ready for the General Council executive meeting. And they will also process the apology, the document, and from there, they will consider putting it on the agenda, most likely for the General Council 45 that will be meeting in August of this year. And so thank you very much for all the contributions that have been made. Lines are still open. Jen has been sharing her email in the chat. Please reach out in case you have other extra inspiration after this meeting. You go back and say, oh my, I didn't say that. I wish I had said that. Put it in writing, send it over, and the group will look at all this various information and see how best to incorporate. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Steve, for facilitating the back-end process of this space that we've had today. Blessings on all of you.